It's a little quicker than most times just because, again, we got a lot to get to tonight. But just want to point out a couple of things. Commercial and multifamily vacancy rates are remaining low. I know this doesn't apply to everybody, and some of you guys hear somebody talking about commercial or multifamily or apartments and stuff like that. You just kind of like turn your brain off. Trust me, you may be brand new, you may just done your first wholesale deal, you may be looking to do your first wholesale deal, but eventually you're going to build up a little bit of seed money, and you either want to invest with Robert or Jeremy and somebody you can be a part. So there's a bunch of people in here that never thought they could be a part of buying an apartment complex or a commercial building, and they just did one. In fact, I think they just sold a commercial building on Cervantes, and one of our guys here was a small partner in that. He never probably thought he could be in that big of a deal. Apartment buildings that they're doing, all that kind of stuff. This is a big part of what we're doing in the future as well, is kind of pulling money together and doing these kind of deals. And so we want to pay attention to this. And right now, commercial and multifamily, it's great right now because many of these vacancy rates are staying low. And the combination of these vacancy rates being low and prices and profits on these deals going up. A lot of the incomes on multifamily and apartment buildings are going up. A lot of the values are going up. What that's done is it's made the lenders in a real happy mood. And so we're starting to see some of the financing begin to loosen up on some of these bigger deals. In fact, we've got some investors here who would attest to the fact sometimes it's harder to get a single family FHA loan than it is to go out and get a loan on a high-end multifamily or apartment type property. So anyway, just keep an eye on that. It's something to be paying attention to. Second thing here, foreclosures are continuing to dry up. Those of you that are in the realtor world and you watch REOs, there's no question the number of REOs that are on the market has continued to diminish. In fact, inventory overall has been very low, historically speaking, has continued to drop over the last 4 years, but specifically REOs has continued to dry up. And this was an article I read just recently, and they were making the point that oftentimes when you went to look at REOs, sometimes, I've always been one to tell you that, looking for listed REOs on the MLS is like trying to find a needle in a haystack to actually get a deal. It's very hard. Getting something on the MLS period is very hard, especially if you're looking to wholesale or rehab. That's almost non-existent. If you are a buy and hold investor, you find something on the MLS, you make a bunch of aggressive offers, maybe you can put something together. If you're in the high end, you make an aggressive offer, maybe you can make something happen. But if you're staying in that like rehab under 100 price range, I mean REO, many of you, if you've tried it, you made bids on auction sites or you made a bid on an REO, you offered them $20,000 less than list and they countered back at like $500 off list and weren't willing to come down. You know the game if you've played it. And even with that, it was very difficult to get a deal. Now it's becoming even more difficult. So what the article was making the point of is that all of these investors in every city around the country are now getting aggressive about going and finding off-market deals. And so it's some of these people that are actually showing up to groups like this who for the longest time would just go to the auction, courthouse auction, or they would go to the REOs and they would find the rental properties that they needed. Now they're starting to make their way down to the REIAs because they know if they're going to find something that has any equity whatsoever, it's going to come through the wholesalers that are out there beating the streets. So this has been music to the ears of those of you who are looking to wholesale or who currently are currently wholesaling, because it's really becoming more and more difficult even to find good buy and hold type properties on the MLS. So some of these guys like Blackjack and I don't know what you go by now, Biggs and Whitey or whatever. Any of you guys that are very aggressive in wholesaling, there's some big opportunity, and even for some of you new folks as well, that is going to be something we need to be paying attention to as we move forward. And then the last thing, I just thought this was interesting. I just put a bug in your ear. It's something we want to pay attention to, kind of a food for thought thing, is that the NMSA is looking to solve the abandonment issue. Okay? Now, the NMSA is the National Mortgage Servicing Association. Now, how many of you have ever negotiated yourself or been a realtor and have negotiated a short sale? Or you've bought a short sale, so you know the process. Okay, quite a few of you. So you know we can all just agree together it sucks, right? Like everybody hates short sales, right? And so now I made a really good living when the market crashed. That's basically all we were doing. Basically from 2009 to 2011, and my mom over here can attest to the fact because she negotiated probably 100 or more of them, we did a ton of short sales. And that was really where most of the money was being made because that was really the only place to make money. But when there were other ways to make money, when the market started to stabilize, and I could go back to rehabbing, I could go back to wholesaling, if you're choosing, you're going to choose the path of least resistance. So if you wanted to pick a way to make money, you're not going to spend a lot of your time, energy, and effort in short sales. In fact, most investors were sending me their short sales because they didn't want to do them. And so eventually, when I didn't really want to do them too much, you will still negotiate one every now and again, but it's not something we're aggressively pursuing. Why? Because it's such a huge cluster, right, to try to do it. It's just terrible. This is going to be interesting to see if they're able to figure out This guy, it was basically a Wells Fargo guy, which they're in a whole heap of trouble right now. But anyway, the guy, this is the guy that's in charge of Wells Fargo's division of property preservation, okay? And so basically what he's in charge of is when these houses become abandoned, they're in charge of preserving the property, make sure it doesn't get damaged any further, making sure that the liability is covered. If there's a pool, they're going to go put, I don't know if any of you guys done the short sales with the pools, they put the cage over them to make sure nobody falls in and dies, all that kind of stuff, property preservation. So he has been tasked with figuring out what is the issue with all these abandoned properties. How do we fix the issue with the fact that we have all these abandoned properties because it's causing neighborhood blight and the values are coming down and all those kind of things. Of course, some of that's getting better as the market's improved, but there's still a huge issue with abandoned properties. If he calls me, and I'm assuming he's probably not going to call me, but if he calls me, I will tell you the secret to the abandoned property issue. Make the stupid short sale process simpler. That's all you have to do, because there's about 100 of them sitting in this room now that would do short sales, that would make offers on these properties if they knew they could make an offer and in a few weeks they could get an answer. I mean, think about that. On any other property, you make an offer and you would expect an answer within a few minutes, right, or a few days. We'd be excited about a few weeks. I mean, that tells you how stupid the process. In fact, many of ours, we'd been happy with a few months if they would get an answer in that time. And many of these would go 9, 10, 12 months before somebody would get back to you. So if he wants to know how to solve the abandonment issue, those properties would start getting scooped up very, very quickly. Because here's the thing, I get emails from people all the time. When people first get in the business, they want to find deals and they don't know how to find them. So number one, they go to the MLS because they don't know any better. Number two, they start driving around and they get really, really excited when they go by a house and they see a big thing in the window that says, this has been abandoned, and they're like, yes, this is a deal. They've abandoned the house. We're going to make a ton of money. This is awesome. So they send me the picture of it, and I'm like, scratch it. That is not something you want to pursue, because at least historically over the last 5, 6, 7 years, most people don't walk away from a house that has a ton of equity in it. It just doesn't normally happen. Like if you're sitting on a house that's paid for, it's worth $100,000, you usually don't just pack up and disappear, right? I mean, that's usually not what you do. So now sometimes when homes are inherited, you will come across an abandoned property where there is some equity there. So don't totally scratch them off your list. But 9 times out of 10, at least historically over the last 5, 7 years or so, those were somebody who, they were way over leveraged, they owed 150, it was only worth 100, they were tired of it, they were 20 payments behind, they just packed up and they left. Okay, so most of what these abandoned properties are properties that would be a short sale if an investor wanted to buy them. But most investor maybe they'll respond to a letter, the person will call them up, oh yeah, we'd like to buy it, oh you owe 150, it's only worth, I would only make an offer for 50 or 70, we'd have to do a short sale, so the investor just disappears, right? If they can make that process simpler, and the word got out on the street, and I started coming to you each month going, listen, look what they're doing. They're making short sales quick. You all would start rushing out, and many of you would be willing to do short sales again. And so that's really the secret to it. But are they going to be smart enough to do that? I have no clue, because we've been working on this for 9 years now, and they still haven't been able to get that thing quicker. You would have thought, I mean, even some of the ones we did a few years ago, you'd have thought by now they'd got that thing figured out, and they still don't. So it's just going to be interesting. But if he has a clue, and they're able to find some way to get that process moving a little quicker, it would be amazing, because it can be quicker. Because I can tell you there are certain lenders that had and most of them were mortgage servicers. See, I want to get into a seminar on this, but early on, some of the mortgage servicers had very, very loose guidelines that they could take offers, right? And then they started tightening those rules down, because they're just servicing somebody else's loan. And so the people who were losing the money on the deal were back off the scenes. And so early on, many of them had loose arrangements for what they could accept. And boy, man, they'd shoot those short sales through, because they didn't care. They'd get all their servicing fees and everything, so they would just accept whatever. And again, granted, they can't do that, because I understand that the guy that's holding the note doesn't want to take a bath on it, but it can be done quickly, because we've done many of them quickly. It's just the majority of them have been very, very slow. So it's going to be interesting. You guys just pay attention to it, keep an eye on it, and we'll keep you guys updated as we hear stuff.